from today's gospel reading, even Jesus was tempted to sin. You know, sometimes it is so very easy to think of Jesus as being so pure and innocent and holy that he was detached from the possibility of sin. And that was only the possibility, because as we know, Jesus did not actually sin. But we do remember that Jesus is in fact fully human in all things but sin. And in the desert, Jesus was just as human as the rest of us. He was tempted by bodily desires. He was tempted by power. He was tempted by the desire to amaze others. And of course, if Jesus had wanted to turn a stone into bread, he certainly could have done that very easily. As we know, Jesus turned water into wine to help friends celebrate a wedding. But he did not use his power to satisfy himself. And of course, Jesus is certainly entitled to hold power over all the nations of the earth. And how we wish he actually would. Yet, he empowers you and me to choose. And I underscore that word, to choose. Choose to honor him. In other words, he does not force us to honor him. He does not bribe us to honor him. He lets us choose to honor him or not to honor him. So Jesus does not force our devotion through power or amazement. He honors our freedom. During Holy Week, we will read the Passion narrative, where Jesus reminds Pontius Pilate that his power comes from God. So he honors our freedom to the point of even accepting torture and death on a cross. So, as we know so very well in our own personal lives, unfortunately, mess happens. Mess does happen. You know, you can't have a big party without a mess. You can't have a banquet with all the fixings if you aren't willing to mess up the kitchen in order to do the fixing. Well, if you want waterfront property, then you have to be willing to clean up after a flood and maybe pay the price of hurricane insurance, because floods do happen. If you want to ski on a snow-covered mountain, then don't complain about snow-covered roads. We know snow happens, don't we? Yes, indeed. So, if you're wondering why the people around you are always irritable and angry and upset, if you mourn the passing of civility, if you yearn for a more peaceful, happier time, then start scrubbing. Start scrubbing with an attitude of welcome and understanding and love for others, with a spirit of humility and compassion extended to everybody, because you know very well that discord happens. And if the world is not as just as it should be, if those responsible for the mess we live in are self-serving hypocrites, then you'd better be ready to take up the broom yourself, raising your own voice, opening your own wallet to come to the aid of the poor, the needy, and the forgotten. Again, sacrifice does happen. And if your focus is on your career at the expense of your family, if the stress of your schedule robs time and energy away from those you love, if you want to flirt with infidelity and feast on a fling, then you better know how to mend a broken heart, or save a shattered marriage, or rescue a shipwrecked family. Unfortunately, those things happen too. So, my friends, mess happens. And the bottom line of all of this is that you have to be willing to clean up after yourself. It's inescapable. So, on this first Sunday of Lent, Jesus calls you and me, and he shows you and me how to clean up our messes, to take responsibility for the disasters we create by what we do or by what we fail to do, and then resolve to make them right. And you know something? The very sign to straighten out this messed up world of ours is already here. It is the Spirit of God within each one of us. And that Spirit enables us to realize the messes we have made and inspires us with the resolve to clean up those messes, to pay the price for a just society by living lives of peace and humility, to heal our broken world by extending ourselves in compassion and forgiveness to the broken among us. And you know something? All of this takes a tremendous amount of humility. Humility is what it's all about. Because if I know that I am poor in spirit, then I will be able to identify with the poor and feed them. If I know that I am a sinner in need of forgiveness, then I will always hold God, who has forgiven me, in the highest regard. So, let's use this time of Lent to good purpose, and let us pray for the humility to place the needs of others before our own. Let us pray also that we keep holy the Lord's Day by giving our best to him each day and following his will rather than our own will. Sounds like a big challenge, doesn't it? Sure does. Well, think about it. And happy Lent.